Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prophet podcast, hosted by Craig Phillips and Jeff Torrey. Visit us at fantasyfootballprophet.com. And now your hosts, Craig and Jeff.
Welcome everyone to the Fantasy Football Prophet podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey, and today we continue the division by division previews, moving on to NFC South, division 6 of 8 now. We only got 2 more to go after this one. And NFC South's quite interesting again. I think this week's been pretty good for these divisions. We had some ones earlier a couple weeks ago that weren't as interesting, but I think NFC South has some interesting teams. But we're going to start off with the Atlanta Falcons, who might be the least interesting, but they still have a lot of fantasy talent. So that's where it is. Matt Ryan at quarterback had a down year last year, which I don't even know if you can say that's a down year. I feel like more it was just 2016 was just such a jump that this last year was pretty much what he normally is. But I think he's still a decent fantasy option. What do you think?
Yeah, he'll be in the lower tier of possible starters. I do think he fell off quite a bit. I think his touchdowns will go back up a bit. But yeah, I think that he's kind of one of those guys that fits into that 8 to 12 range like really nicely. And he does have upside because he's done it before.
Yep.
He had 20 touchdowns thrown last year. It wouldn't surprise me if he had a year where he threw 30. I'm not going to predict that, but that's why he has that upside, because he can do it. He has Julio Jones. He has a lot of weapons to throw to. Last year it was just, kind of lower than even I thought, and that was coming off of an unbelievable year.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. He's being ranked right now at 17th, but that's a really good value for him. So I'd still probably want him over Dak Prescott, who's ranked below. For sure want him over Dak Prescott and a couple other guys down there.
Now that he doesn't have Dest.
Especially now. But the rest of the players of the team, Julio, still a great option at wide receiver. It's just I don't want to. Second round, I think that's fine. I still like to go running back, so I won't get Julio on any teams pretty much. He's ranked right now number 4 on the current ranks, behind Brown, Hopkins, and Beckham. That's probably about right.
Yeah. I can't get over how many yards he catches every single year, and I also cannot get over how he does not score touchdowns. Yeah, I realized it was non-ending when we talked about how he can't catch a touchdown, but he only had 3 last year, and he had 1,400 yards receiving.
Yeah, he's still great. He's top 5. You might think of putting Michael Thomas over him. Some people will. I don't think I'm there yet. I think Julio's still my number 4. It's close, but the problem is I won't have him on a team, most likely.
He just,
just where he's going to go.
Yeah, he costs too much, and it's a good thing. He does deserve to be up there, but I just won't end up with him.
Then number 2 receiver, Mohamed Sanu. He's not a guy I'm really going to draft. He's going to be more of a fill-in, if anything. He's going to flash at times and have good weeks, but to me, he's never going to be good. He's never going to be good enough where you're going to put him in your lineup. So I just kind of avoid that and not really concerned about Mohamed Sanu very much. Tight end wise, we can talk about that. Austin Hooper still has a shot, I think, to break out. Still young. It was year number 3 coming in. Tight ends don't break out till later.
Yeah,
he's showing signs.
Still very young. Do you think this is the year?
Maybe not. Probably not yet. But if you want to take a chance on him, you're not going to have to pay anything at all. He's ranked way down there, 24th right now. So this is one you probably just don't even draft. You just wait and let's see if something happens. It's possible.
I mean, he has a clear shot as the number 1 tight end. You do have Julio, and you do have a great backfield, but there's still a lot of room for him, especially coming off a year where you didn't throw that many touchdowns. You only threw 20. This guy came off of a 500 yards, 3 touchdown season last year. If you're going to predict one of these young tight ends, bursting out, he would be on the short list for sure. He does have a lot of upside because he's on a pretty good offense, and he is a very athletic tight end.
Yeah, I do like him. So if you want him on your team, it's going to take nothing to get him.
Yeah, and that's even better.
Yep. And then the running backs. It's still Devontae Freeman with Tevin Coleman there, taking away some from Freeman always. This is a tough one for me because Freeman. The nice thing about Freeman right now is he's ranked 11th in the early consensus. Sometimes he goes lower than that, but that also means you have a very good shot at getting him as your number 2. Devontae Freeman as your number 2. That's wonderful. I love Devontae Freeman as a number 2 running back on a fantasy team. think that's perfect. That's a perfect spot. I don't want him as a number 1. The highest ranked, he's currently a 7th. His lowest, he's 14th. I don't like him at the 7th best running back. But getting him in that early second tier of running backs as a running back 2, I love that. He's still been great. I mean, he was injured for 2 games last year, but the numbers, he catches enough balls to offset maybe not getting full running numbers, but he's very solid. Even with a timeshare, he gets 200 carries for the most part. He's going to do pretty well with them. You know what to kind of expect from him. So I do like him as a number 2 running back. Not number 1 anymore. Never really was a big fan there as number 1.
I mean, even that, he would be borderline.
Yeah, he's borderline there, but yeah, I think he's solid.
Yeah, and you look at his numbers, and last year was even down from the years previous, and he only missed 2 games. He was still fine, right? Like you said, 850 yards rushing with 7 touchdowns. You throw 300 receiving yards and a touchdown after that. But the years before that, when he missed one last game, but over 1,000 yards, barely, but over 1,000 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns both years, and then on top of that, 2 touchdowns receiving with 400 to 500 yards. I mean, the guy really is unbelievably dynamic, and he's doing this all with Tevin Coleman backing him up, still getting a lot of work. I mean, it just says a lot about the guy. So, echoing you, if I got him as my number 2 running back, I would be insanely psyched.
Yeah, it's going to be... That's a perfect spot. That's a perfect spot for him. And then the other guy, Tevin Coleman. He's fantasy relevant in his own right.
He really should be. Is. I mean, he would be a starter on any other team almost.
I mean, the last 2 years he's ranked, I think, 17th and then 22nd last year for fantasy rank. So he's a running back 3 at the worst. I mean, he was a 2 actually for 12-team leagues. He's been a 2 in final position the last 2 years. Not going to draft him like that, but actually he's currently ranked 24th. So that is in 12-team leagues. That's a running back 2, but in reality, he's more of a flex option for you. It's a tough price to pay though if you want to get him to go with Freeman. So I don't try to handcuff him with Freeman. I don't try to handcuff at all with that. It's too much of a price to pay. And the problem with Coleman is for me, I guess he's at a good spot. I guess rank wise, that's probably pretty much where he should be right now. The guys below him. There's no sure thing below him. It's Duke Johnson, who's in this same kind of situation. I mean, Saquon Barkley is below him on the consensus. Obviously, he's going to jump higher, so he'll be below that. But the other guys is Chris Thompson, so he's one spot ahead of Duke Johnson, Chris Thompson, and Rex Burkhead. It's all the same type of situations. Yep. So that's about where he should be, as the top of players in a timeshare type, where they're the second back in a timeshare. So I think that's a perfect spot for him. So looking at this rank, yeah, I think getting Tevin Coleman as like a flex option is probably a pretty good play there. It's weird to think a backup running back's going to be that, valuable, but he really is. He's not really a backup running back, I feel like. He plays enough in his own right. So I wouldn't hesitate too much if you can get him at a good value.
Yeah, when you look at Tevin Coleman's numbers, especially the last couple of years, if you were going to tell me, hey, does this sound like a backup? And you have 900 yards with 8 touchdowns. And you're like, oh, that's borderline, right? And then the year before that, he was even better with, about 900 yards again, but he had 11 touchdowns.
Yeah, I still hesitate. I don't know why, but when I really look at the ranks and see the players around him, I shouldn't, And, talking about the other guys I talked about, Duke Johnson, Chris Thompson, those kind of guys. Coleman has such a better shot to be a number 1 than they ever do. If Freeman's down, Coleman's a number 1. Duke Johnson, Chris Thompson, like those, Rex Burkhead, they don't really ever have that shot. They don't have that potential, I feel like. They're in the role they are, that's what they are. If the player ahead of them goes down, I think they stay in their role. Somebody else steps in. Coleman jumps up to the number 1, so he makes himself that much more valuable. So I think, again, he's right there. He keeps producing, and people forget about him. So I think it's a good player. How about go to Carolina? The Panthers got rid of Jonathan Stewart. So Christian McCaffrey is now, I guess, the only back in town. And, he really is. Unless they draft somebody, he is it right now. Yeah, I don't think why would they draft somebody? Maybe later rounds. It's him or Cameron Artis-Payne or Fozzie Whitaker. He could be very valuable Last year alone, he had 80 catches last year. Already, a rookie. 80 catches, 650 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I guess that's where it's at. Especially if you're in a PPR league, he's going to skyrocket. And if you're not in a PPR, he's going to be the biggest difference. Like that is going to be a player that rises and falls with the type of fantasy football you're playing.
You know what? I didn't think this was going to happen to me. But I think I'm going to be. I'm really, really intrigued by Christian McCaffrey this year. Just looking again at those receiving numbers, those are going to be there. The receiving numbers aren't going away, and he's going to keep. Ah, man, I like this. I don't know what it is. I think he's going to double the amount of carries he had. So if he can get close to 1,000 yards, get a few more rushing touchdowns, the ones that, I guess Cam Newton's still going to steal a lot of those. I think Christian McCaffrey is a very good running back, too, to have on your team with a lot of potential. I haven't been a big McCaffrey guy, but right now I don't know, something about it. I'm getting excited about Christian McCaffrey.
I really want to know how many carries he could possibly get, because he had 117 last year.
I can see him getting 200. I can see him.
How many did James Stewart have?
James Stewart? Who's James Stewart? He played for the Lions like back in 1999 or something. Isn't that James Stewart? Jonathan Stewart?
Yeah, Jonathan Stewart. The wrong J name.
I don't think anybody remembers James Stewart from the Lions.
that's reaching way too back.
We could talk about him. He had like a career high of 1,184 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's actually pretty good fantasy numbers.
All right, so Jonathan Stewart, getting back to the present day, he had 198 rushes. So there's another 200 rushes that are up for grabs. But I kind of I'm leaning towards what you're thinking as far as McCaffrey getting 200 carries.
Yeah.
It's all about whether or not he can actually, stay healthy with that amount of carries, because he's going to get a ton of receptions, and maybe they still want to use him that way. I feel like, Cameron Artis-Payne is always just hanging out in the background of that team. Also, neither of these guys, James Stewart or McCaffrey.
James Stewart.
Dang it, man. I keep saying that. It's Jonathan Stewart. I've already forgotten, man. You got cut by the Panthers or you're gone. You're out of the league. But neither of them average a very good, yard per clip. Both of them were mid threes, which is also saying something about their offensive line, which they should really figure out. So, if they do, add someone in the draft or something like that, that could help them out. But that is definitely a worry. But like you said, I think the biggest aspect of that is his receiving. Can he actually go over what he did last year? That is a ton of balls to catch.
Yep.
Do you think he can?
Yep, I think he can.
Exceed 80 catches as a running back?
I think he could be up there. I really do. Just because they're going to use him a lot. They got Devin Funchess out there to throw the ball to. They got Torrey Smith as a number 2. And, why not throw to him? Greg Olsen should be back, but McCaffrey's going to get, maybe 80 is maybe.
So many catches.
I think that's the floor, though. 80 to 90, I think he'll be in that range.
I really would like, I'm going to have to look this up later, but I really want to know, how many catches is a record for a running back? It would have to probably go back to Marshall Faulk or something.
Hundreds, like that. I'm sure somebody's caught over 100 balls before.
Yeah, they would have to have. But still, it's so impressive. 80 catches as a rookie. Even with that, if you're getting 80 catches, in PPR, that's insane. But, to buoy yourself with 650, say 600, 500 yards even in the receiving game, and if you had a down year. If he gets another 50 catches, you can guarantee 1,000 yards from this guy. Mm-hmm. And then you're just hoping he gets a few more touchdowns running it than he did last year, which he managed 2. But he got 5 in the receiving game, which I don't see that going down.
No, I think he's going to be really good. I'm excited about it.
I'm really interested to see how they pair him, though. Yeah. I really do wonder if they're going to keep him as a more of a hybrid receiver and not try to get him a ton of rushing.
I feel like they're going to have to draft somebody later in the draft. I don't think they can do it with Cameron Artis-Payne. Because Fozzie Whitaker's kind of more of a McCaffrey type, it feels like. He's been that kind of role. But Cameron Artis-Payne, he was more like Stewart, but I don't think he's that good. So
no, and he only got 18 rushes last year. So
that quarterback, say Cam Newton, who, definitely played a lot better than I think I expected last year.
Oh yeah, He made me eat my words for sure.
And one thing I know we talked about, we didn't think the rushing numbers could come back, and he had his highest rushing total ever last year. He had more carries than he's ever had. He had more yards than he's ever had. Didn't have his touchdowns weren't a career high, but he had a career high in rushes and a career high in yards. Didn't see it happening.
After the first 3 games, I was absolutely certain. I was like, we're correct. I was like, he can't get it done passing. He has the least amount. He's not trying to rush the ball at all. And then after that, it was like he just went back to himself and he was like, I can't play like this. If I get hurt, I get hurt. And he just went for it and just blew up immediatally after he started rushing a little bit.
And they made the playoffs again with him running the ball, so maybe that won't go away. Maybe that's why they don't need another running back. They have Cam Newton.
It's very true.
So, I mean, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I'm not always terribly excited just because when I see 22 passing touchdowns, it doesn't get me excited. But he has the rushing numbers. He's going to make himself valuable.
It's crazy. He had 139 rushes last year.
It's crazy.
It is so crazy.
I'm going to stay away probably, most likely. Unless I get him. I mean, if you get him for nothing, I don't know. He's too erratic for me in numbers, I feel like sometimes.
How is this guy? It is unbelievable to think that this guy can stay healthy as a running quarterback that has played in the league since 2011, and every single year besides for 2016, he's had over 100 rushes.
It's crazy.
It is. It's insane. I don't know how the guy does it.
No. Then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the Panthers. We talked about Funchess. Funchess, he's fine. I'm not excited. Greg Olsen, he didn't play much with the injury last year. He's still top 10 option. Maybe top 5 option at tight end. He's still probably pretty solid. But yeah, Funchess.
I mean, he does have a lot of room to grow still.
He does. He's interesting. And I don't think you're going to have to overpay to get him. So he's like a 3rd on your team. He's in that, maybe a 4th even. He's interesting there. He could be okay.
Yeah, and I say that I'm not a huge Devin Funchess guy because
no, not at all.
But at the same time, you look at his numbers, and he had 840 yards with 8 touchdowns, and he did that all with 63 receptions. And every year, obviously he became more and more prevalent. He's now the wide receiver number 1, which pretty much was last year, the entire year. But you have to think that his receptions are going to keep increasing. As the number 1 wide receiver, I don't even care if it's Carolina. You think that 80 receptions would be pretty safe. And if he has that, you're thinking this guy could potentially be a 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdown scorer.
Yeah, probably. He's going to be, right now he's ranked 29th. So I guess that's probably a decent spot for him. He's one spot ahead of Sammy Watkins, so I'm still going to pick over him because I like Sammy.
Yeah, Sammy, I mean, he's a freak athletically, but I mean, maybe this is one of those situations where, and also 29th, and you think that a couple of rookies will, go to teams and people will jump them into the mix. Yeah,
if Dallas drafts Calvin Ridley, he'll jump him.
So potentially this guy could fall out of starting wide receiver position for fantasy, which actually would create a huge value for him. Yeah. I think that this guy could be kind of somewhat of a sleeper. I don't know if you can call him a sleeper.
He's not going to be overpriced. There's that. All right, how about the New Orleans Saints? Talk about them a little bit. They have a lot of fantasy options here. Drew Brees, obviously a quarterback. Don't really have to talk about him too much. He's still great. He's still a top 10 option. I'm not going to say top 5 anymore. He's more in the 5 to 10 range, but he still should be pretty good, even though they have become a little more run-friendly team than they were in the past. You got Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, which, again, Alvin Kamara was so good last year. He's going to be a top 10 back because he's going to catch the ball and he just makes things happen. And I can see him even getting more carries this year. And Mark Ingram's there as well. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm laughing because I thought that McCaffrey catching 80 balls was insane, and I just looked and Kamara had 81.
Yeah,
for a lot more yards. So yeah, I mean, I obviously that's why I had so Kamara good. On a few of my teams last year, and he really is. He's just the real deal. He's phenomenal. It doesn't scare me at all, the fact that they still have Ingram there. They have a ton of weapons. This guy's just way too talented. I love this team. I love Kamara the most, but there's
Ingram still should be pretty good, but I am staying away. To be honest, I'm just kind of staying away.
Right, because he's going to be probably in the top 10.
Yeah, he's about 11th, 12th ish, which he's falling around like a Jordan Howard, and I want Jordan Howard over Ingram in that kind of spot. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple other guys I might want over Ingram just because I could see them going away from him more and using Kamara.
Right. And you wonder how much they could go away from him.
Yeah. It's we don't know. They've been interesting in how they've used their running backs. We don't really know.
I mean, they really did turn into a rushing team. The amount of yardage both of these guys put up, both receiving and rushing, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Ingram, just to put in perspective, did total about 1,500 yards with 12 touchdowns. I mean, it's unbelievable they can support that kind of production from both both running backs. The question is, what does that do for their passing game? Obviously, you said Breeze, very, very safe. You do have Michael Thomas, and I think both of us are, he's
going to be top 5.
Right. He is a very, very talented guy, and I think this is the year he finally kind of proves it, because I think he was overdrafted the last couple of years, but you saw it. He's really coming into his own. But now they also have Cam Meredith,
who's going to be very, very interesting pick. I don't know what to expect on where people are going to rank him. That's actually going to be where I'm going to have to wait and decide how I value him based on where he's going in drafts. That's kind of how I like to do it. And I think he has a lot of potential. A lot of other people are going to think that too. So I got to see if it actually happens and he jumps up draft boards or not. But he could be very interesting and maybe do what we thought Willie Snead should have done last year, which Willie Snead's probably still going to be on the team. He hasn't actually signed the offer yet, but they did tender an offer or whatever, and he hasn't signed with any other teams. He visited the Ravens, but no contract offer came from that. It sounds like he's going to attend the camps here, the off-season stuff. So Snead should be there too, but he's going to be like their 4 behind Thomas. I mean, obviously Meredith and Ted Ginn's still there, who's probably realistically the actual number 2 in name. It's Ted Ginn. He's always going to be out there, but there's some players to go to. So I like Cameron Meredith, though. That's going to be one that I'm waiting and seeing how he's valued. And I might pick him up. And Snead, no, never happened. Very disappointed.
Yeah, he still might be valuable, but I don't think anyone really saw how much they were going to shift from the passing game to the running game.
Never expected that.
That was the crazy part. And a lot of Drew Brees' yards came from throwing to his backs. So It really did take a lot of that opportunity away from the wide receivers last year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love Cam Meredith too, but it's kind of like the rule. As soon as a player goes to a different team, it's on everybody's radar. So now I feel like Cam Meredith is going to kind of blow up, where I could see him, becoming a darling and being, drafted over someone like Funchess.
Yep. All right. Final team. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're a little interesting. Jameis, we're still waiting for the breakout. Is this going to be the year, Jeff? Do you see it happening? Maybe?
I see a better year than last year.
This is where it's interesting for them is they don't really have a running back, I feel like. They obviously released Doug Martin, so their backs now are Peyton Barber and Jacquizz Rodgers. I don't think that's good enough. So I'm expecting them to draft somebody. Or maybe they go sign C.J. Anderson. I don't know. They need something, I think. I don't think you can go into the year with Peyton Barber and Rodgers. I don't feel like that's good enough at all. I really don't. I don't like it. And that's where, as much as I like some of the weapons around Winston, like Mike Evans, and DeSean Jackson's still fine. He can do, and I like Chris Godwin, Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard. I like all that. If you have no running game, it's going to suffer. So you're going to have to get something. And I think they will. I just don't know what that is yet. But maybe they luck out and get Saquon Barkley in the first round.
It's possible. Do you think, because Winston, last year he did take a step back, right?
Yeah.
The year before that, though, very healthy numbers. 4,000 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, a little high in the interceptions, 18. But do you think that because their running situation is so dire, at least what it looks like, that this could potentially prop him up and maybe not make for the best football player, but prop him up fantasy-wise?
I don't know. Honestly, I think they need a running back there to keep the defenses honest and jump him up. I don't know. Maybe he'd be like a garbage time player. It's hard to say how that's going to work out.
They do have a lot of interesting pieces to throw to, though. It's not like they're going to have – you can really key on one guy. Obviously, Mike Evans is going to be the guy, but you have DeSean Jackson to take off the top. O.J. Howard, who is really a very interesting prospect because he's really like a wide receiver out there. You still have Cameron Brate and then, Humphreys and a few other guys.
Yeah, it's possible that even if they have a bad team, he could have good fantasy numbers. I'd like to see a running back there, at least keep the defenses honest.
They more than likely they'll probably end up with one of these rookie running backs. It won't be a Saquon, Barkley probably.
Most likely won't fall to them, but
there's a handful of other good running backs that
you have to be probably a second-round guy. And then,
right, but it'll be very interesting because I think this is one of those situations where a running back can go there and be, fruitful fantasy-wise right away.
Yep. I think so, too. That'd be a perfect spot for somebody to fill in there. If a rookie goes there, he's going to be, I think, definitely one of the more hyped guys.
Yeah.
That's what's going to most likely happen. But, yeah, Mike Evans should have a bounce-back year, I think. He really disappointed last year, but he's still a top 10 guy.
He really struggled as soon as Jameis Winston went down.
Yeah, he just didn't do much. He's still good enough. He's, obviously great, and he's still young. He's going to be fine.
His touchdowns just weren't there last year, and, he missed a game, and he did. He just kind of lost his head as soon as Jameis went out. He got suspended. But he's still, 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns is nothing to sneeze at. But we really thought that he was going to be, just the beast he was before when he had 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns. It was, a remarkable year. But then again, that was, 8 touchdown difference.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston missed 3 games. It just kind of all went downhill.
Yeah, just a bad year for the team. No running game, really. Just all around didn't work. Then, O.J. Howard to say, I think he's going to take another step up this year. Usually happens with tight ends. So.
Yeah, what are your projections for him?
He's going to be a guy I might pick up in drafts at the end of drafts, thinking he could be a top 10 guy at the end of the year. I know they just re-signed Cameron Brate, but that doesn't honestly mean anything. If they're not going to hold back O.J. Howard just because they signed Cameron Brate to a contract.
No, I think you can run 2 tight ends.
Yeah, and if he's going to step up and be really good, they're going to use him. Look at the Patriots used to do with the 2 tight end thing. It can work if they're both good enough. They're not going to hold back a talented player. That's what's going to happen. He's, I think, talented enough.
Yeah,
and he showed signs.
He's a really good athlete. He's huge.
Yep.
And, what I like to see last year is, especially down the stretch, he really started showing up in the red zone for tight ends especially, which, either kind of what they're going to catch receiving yards after you see him year in, year out. He caught 400. That's nothing special, but at the same time, 6 touchdowns. And, 3 of those came in the last 5 games. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to see. And I think that progression will carry over. So I really liked O.J. Howard, especially for how thin tight end is. But the only bad thing is because it's so shallow, I could see a lot of people jumping on this train.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any reason to draft Brate? Because he was still relevant last year.
I'd rather have Howard.
Yeah, so, if you were going to get, if you got Brate late.
I'm not going to pick him late. I'd pick somebody else.
Yeah. All right.
And then, I just don't see, I wouldn't worry about the contract. People are going to say that's part of the reason why you don't draft Howard, but I don't think that stuff matters. Even though in the last episode, I did talk about Derrick Henry suffering because the Titans obviously like Deion Lewis, so they signed to a contract. But that's different because I don't think Derrick Henry's that good. So, I think O.J. Howard is. That's really going to come back and haunt me if he's like a 1,500-yard rusher.
At least you're keeping it fair being both Alabama players.
True. That is true. Yeah.
Is there anyone else on this team that's intriguing?
Chris Godwin, I'm a little interested. He showed some signs last year that he could play a little bit. And I like him. I do like the guy. I think he can be a pretty solid player. You think
that he's going to take over for Humphreys in the wide receiver 3 position?
Kind of what I'm thinking. A solid year for a rookie. 34 catches, 525 yards is pretty solid off 34 catches. Only 1 touchdown, but for a rookie and for stepping up later doing it, I like that. I think there's something there. And he was what round was he? He was a 3rd round draft pick. That's pretty talented players yet get drafted in the 3rd round. So I think there could be something with him. He could definitely team up with Mike Evans, be a nice little 1-2 punch. So just keep an eye on him. Not draft him. You don't need to draft Chris Godwin, but just keep an eye on him and just kind of remember the name and pick him up if you have to, if he shows any signs of something playing decent. So, all right. I think that's going to do it for the NFC South. We got 2 more divisions next week. Right before the draft, we got AFC West, NFC West, and then the draft is already next week, Thursday. So we'll finally get to see where all these players are going. We'll actually have a good idea what's going on, and then we'll maybe get some rankings in the month of May. start putting out some early ranks, positions, trying to actually see where we're thinking we're going to slot these guys. We've been just going off what other people are ranking so far, haven't actually put together our own. Might be time to do that and see what we think. But we will talk to you guys next week.